Everybody pictures.
Here's my shot.
Okay.
I got
you.
Look alive, heads up.
This rep coming
Yeah, put your face up. Come on, Yes.
Good back there?
Where's Dominic? Oh, Dominic's there.
She's the older one. You gotta be in the hospital. Miss Kathy, please sit. Get comfortable. Yes. Please sit, get comfortable. I'm sorry, y'all. Last year she got a whole Last year. What time do you leave today? Hey everyone, if you can, please take your seats.
I didn't get it. You did not see the picture. Oh my God.
Hold on 1 second. Okay guys, if you can, please take your seats. So we have to allow the person who pretty much made the day possible for our youth move, Mr. H. Walker, who is the Director of Global Inclusion for McDonald's Corporation. Not only has Mr. H supported us this year, but he has supported us in the McDonald's Corporation last year and made our National Youth Day possible for Youth Move. And so if I can, introduce Mr. H. Walker.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. The most important thing for me to do is to always honor relationships. I think the most important thing in my life have been the relationships that have helped me to grow as a human being and as a man. And I appreciate the introduction, but I am here because of a wonderful woman, partner, leader, and sister who embraces man and embraces what we do, and she invited me to be able to participate. And I said, Christina, come on up to the mic. And she goes, no, I'm fine where I am. I'm going to embarrass her a little bit. Christina, stand up. Come on, Christina, I'm forward, stand up. Okay. So although they said that I was responsible for this, I'm really here because Christina invited me and allowed me to be here, and she is such a great partner to Nan. So, while you are getting settled, I do not have a lot of time. I'm just going to share a couple of things with you that I think are very critical for you to learn. Number one, when I was your age, nothing like this was happening. There was nothing like this that was going on in our neighborhoods, in our cities, in our communities. There was nothing of this nature where I could go and network and learn. Okay? So if you understand that first point, clap once. All right, we're okay. We're okay. So I'm going to hit on 3 topics for you. Okay, just 3 topics that I've learned. I'm going to talk about power, privilege, and opportunity. 3 things that I really didn't understand until I was in my 30s or 40s. I did not really get those concepts. So I remember starting working in fast food when I was 15 years old. And I remember my boys would tease me talking about they ain't flipping no burgers. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I need a little money. Mama ain't give me no money. I need something. So I started working, and I realized, you know, that flipping that hamburger, there was a lot to it. No one had taught me how to prepare and cook meals for 200 to 300 to 400 people every hour. No one had taught me about sanitation. No one had taught me about temperature control. No one taught me about equipment maintenance. No one taught me about teamwork and team building. No one taught me about customer service. I am so grateful today that I was flipping burgers. No one taught me. When they said, okay, so you learn the grill, now you need to come up and learn the register. And I'm like, I'm 16 at that point, and I said, there's $300-400 in here. I only had like maybe, you know, well back then it was 10 cents because you could get as much gum as you could and some other stuff. But I don't know anything about $300-400. I never knew how to count money like that and cash it out and do exchanges and understand the tax system. And I said, wow, I am so glad I started flipping burgers, because I was financially illiterate. No one taught me how to manage money. No one taught me how to collect money, how to give it back to people. But most importantly, which is critical, I never understood the value of when people were purchasing things. So 2 lessons so far. You know, I learned a lot of lessons that I would have not learned about food preparation, sanitation, temperature control, cleanliness, equipment maintenance when I was in the grill area. And then when I got up front, I started learning about the appropriate and proper treatment of human beings. The ability to smile and say please and thank you, no matter how they behave. Now you need to follow this. Sometimes they were rude. Sometimes they were tired. Sometimes they were sleepy. Sometimes they didn't feel like being bothered. You know, but it was my job to always smile and say thank you and say please, invite them back and give them the appropriate change and the right service. I had never been responsible like that before. No one taught me how to do that. And so when I was 16 years old, I said, wow, I am learning some important skills here. And so I started really collecting all of this knowledge. And then the next thing I knew, I got promoted to a shift manager. So it was just a little bit above what I was doing, but I started running a shift, and then I got promoted to an assistant manager, and then I got promoted to a general manager. And I said, wow, I am 21 years old, no college education, and I am managing a $3 million business because I started flipping burgers at the age of 15. And if I would have listened to my boys, right? Because today they're still asking me, hey, you got 5, you got 5. And I'm like, man, you should have been with me flipping those burgers and you wouldn't be asking me for 5. I said, not only do I have 5, I said, but I have a company car.
All right.
I have a company gas card. I have company insurance and a 401k and stocks and shares because I was flipping burgers. Brother, what do you have? Yeah. And I said, take care. Take care when you look down on another person's profession. You know, take care and listen to what you say about what you won't do to earn money.
That's right.
Because it wasn't about the money. It was not about the money. Sure, I was able to go do my little thing at the mall, right? But if I didn't have those skills that I've learned, And now I look at what I do within the McDonald's system, and unfortunately, and I'm working on it because Christina's been pushing me, I decided to go back to Roosevelt University and get my degree. So I told myself this year I'll be 52 in May. And I said, it's a good time to get a great education. But to know that McDonald's believed in me, that they didn't say, well, you know, you don't have a degree. And now that I know that I'm director of global inclusion and community engagement for 4 areas of the world, right? 1.8 million employees, serving 70 million customers every day in 35,000 restaurants, flipping burgers. And the most recognized and most powerful brand in the world. So what I learned about power is that it equals knowledge.
That's right.
You know, that the only thing I can do with power is I can learn and I can share that learning. What I learned about privilege is that I was privileged. I was so grateful and so thankful, you know, to work for a brand like McDonald's that gave me an opportunity, you know, that gave me things that I would not have been able to attain with anyone else. You know, I mean, and the privilege to work alongside such incredible human beings. It's just been a phenomenal experience. And then I learned about power. And the powerful piece was the ability to be humble. That I have the power to be humble. I have the power to have humility. I have the power to share my mistakes and my failures with others so they don't go down that same path. Because I made some now. I've made some mistakes and some bad decisions, and I failed at some things. And all the while, I didn't always have someone to say, there's a landmine out there you're about to step on. Right? Sometimes I just stepped on it, and the consequences weren't good. So I tell adults, if you have the opportunity to share your failures with people, especially young people, let them know the areas where you fail so they don't make those same mistakes. You know, talk about power in the sense of learning. Power allows me to reach more people, to learn more, to be humble, and to have a lot more humility. Talk about privilege. Working for a great brand like McDonald's, being able to go back to school and McDonald's pay for it, right? And McDonald's pay for it. And talk about the wonderful education opportunities like we have within McDonald's for our crew members and for all of our staff. You know, and then this idea, you know, of opportunity. You know, do not let anyone devalue you. Do not let anyone talk bad about your profession. You know, do not be embarrassed or walk away or turn your back and pick up your pace walking. You know, when someone is earning earnest living for themselves and their family. And I promise you, if you are a generous listener, if you listen well, you know, with humility, if you take on the lessons that people are teaching you, right? If you share those lessons, and then consistency, stay with it, and then most importantly, it's going to sound a little strange, but give it away. You know, give to others that are less fortunate, and then guess what? You'll be standing up here, and you'll be telling your fantastic, wonderful story to a lot of students so they can be just like you. So we are so grateful to Reverend Al Sharpton. We're so grateful to Nan. On behalf of our CEO, Steve Easterbrook, on behalf of our Global Chief Diversity Officer, Pat Harris, and in honoring the wonderful Christina Alfaro, who has managed this relationship for years. This would not be happening at all without her. Thank you so much again, Christina. We want to wish you a wonderful conference. Have a great day, and we will see you again. Thanks so much.
you know, we always have some really special guests here, and someone really wants to come and talk with you guys. Now that Mr. H has blessed us with his amazing, encouraging word in his story. But Mr. Mike Brown Sr., the father of Michael Brown Jr., thought it was very important that he have the opportunity to come and speak with you and talk to young people and just really like uplift your spirit. Is he here? So he's on his way in here now. So should we start the panel? So we'll go ahead and start the panel, and I guess we'll interrupt.
Let's give McDonald's another round of applause. I want to say to you all, good afternoon for coming. This panel, as it was said, is on. This panel, as it was said, is on the racial divide in America. And here before us, we have some of the greatest leaders around the United States and globally who has come to talk to us about this particular topic, which is so prevalent in today's society. It says walls. Walls are something that divides, it's something that segregates, and it's something that separates us. But all walls are meant to fall. And that question is how? How can we break down those walls, and how can we turn them down so we can change it for the better? Regardless of what our background is, regardless of what our racial preferences and sexuality is, how can we break those walls and all come together to create that change in the United States as one human origin, as one human race, and as one body, and come together to make that change? So that question is how. You know, today we have some of the greatest panelists on this panel to discuss that how with you on today. Starting to my far right, we have Jabir Donaldson, who is the chapter president at Morehouse College. And to his left, we have Ms. Lauren Sills, who's the advocacy manager at Generation Progress. And to her left, we have Ms. Tamar Torshan, who is the Southeastern Region Director of the Man Youth Movement. To my left, we have Rashini Premaratne, who is with the Youth for National Change, who is from Richmond, Virginia. And to her left, we have Mr. Brian Sofro, who is a youth leader at New York City Youth Move Public. And myself, my name is Minister Tylik McMillon. I'm the chapter president for Virginia and of Youth Move. So today, first by starting off this panel, we want to see what all our panelists' ideas is on this general issue. So we're going to start by our panelists each giving a brief statement on this topic. Starting with Ms. Brian. Oh, we start with the ladies first. Start with Ms. Tamar.
All right, so good afternoon, thank you for being here. My opinion on the racial divide, I honestly believe that with the racial divide here in America, that is all created to separate us all as individuals and fight against each other and fight against other races. So I think it's all, made up in a sense, to understand that, everybody's fighting against each other just to keep the bitter and the anger up. That's my whole look on the racial divide here in America.
Hey everyone, I'm Lauren. I'm an advocacy manager for an organization called Generation Progress. We are a policy and advocacy organization in DC, and so what we strive to do is engage and empower and mobilize young people on the issues that you care about. So if you care about gun violence, if you care about racial injustice, if you care about LGBTQ issues, immigration reform, we work on it all, and through my role, I'm able to really kind of bridge that gap. And so when it comes to this issue, similar to what my colleague said, I definitely want to bridge, some of the issues that people have and the racial tension, but we do that through organizing and mobilizing under one goal. So I definitely think that there are ways that we can do, there's strategies behind it, messaging, campaigning, and organizing tools that we can use to really build a stronger movement, but also be allies to other movements as well.
Again, my name is Shabir Donaldson, and I think in terms of the racial divide in America, we should educate people. I know in some parts of America, especially in Atlanta, some people don't even know it is a racial divide. So I think that we should educate young people and people in general about it. And like you said, knowledge is power.
There are a few major points I want to make about the racial divide in America. The first being that it's not just a black and white issue. I myself am from Sri Lanka, an Asian country, and I believe that is, there are many stereotypes surrounding not only African Americans, not only Caucasians, but also Asian Americans, Hispanics, people of all colors in the United States. I think the two major causes for the racial divide are, one, a lack of awareness about different cultures, different religions, different beliefs, all of those different systems that people follow in the United States. There's a lack of awareness among other groups. And that's what causes the racial divide, but also a lack of respect for other cultures, specifically I live in Richmond, Virginia, which of course has a very deep history with the racial divide in the United States. And I think that it's important that in our school systems we're educating students from a young age about those different beliefs, those different systems, and teaching them to respect all people of all differences. Thank you.
Hi, Brian.
Just piggybacking off of what she said, I do believe that there's a level of ignorance involved in sort of the racial divide. Even at my current institution, I attend Columbia University, and I find that a lot of other racial groups, not whites in general, but other minority groups tend to feel like the black experience doesn't apply to them. And so I address to them like, all right, well, take the integration of schools. Prior to a lot of civil rights movement, they were only admitting white students, and that access, which all students were accepted, was the result of the black civil rights movement, which enabled all races to attend certain institutions. So those small things that I've dropped, explained to them, I feel like a lot of them forget that a lot of the issues at hand that impact African Americans in this country at one point did apply to them as well, and they don't understand that that's the reality that we're facing, and they feel like they're not exactly going to be victimized by such racism and institutional structures that are in place. And so that, to me, is what I push for the most, is trying to bring on different groups and allowing them to understand that this applies to them as well. And in order for us to move on as a community, we have to unite and understand that it impacts us all. Everything impacts us all.
Adding on to what you said, that leads me to my next question, dealing with education. The thing is it that we don't punish the actors? We punish the actors instead of the sayers, the ones who vocalize their opinion. We focus on the minor important issues rather than the big things as itself. As it was said before, we focus on the donut, and we focus on the hole inside of the donut rather than the donut itself. So, for example, we focus on things that are said and that are vocalized, but instead of looking at that discrimination, do you think that we don't look at such as the gap in education, the discrimination in education, as he was saying, the gap in the income of race? So what are your thoughts on that? Anybody?
Well, there definitely should be a strategy behind everything, whether you're a part of NAM movement, whether it's part of Generation Progress, or any kind of organization or company that you belong to, you should have a strategy. You should have long-term goals, you should have short-term goals, intermediate goals. And so if your goal, your ultimate goal is to make a change, in order to do that, you have to have different steps, right? So, you know, if you're into Twitter town halls or you want to do things around social media, like, it's fine to do that. That definitely is a part of educating and raising awareness on different issues. But there also have to be other policies that are put into place, other action steps that are put into place. You can't just start with education. You've got to get that data behind it. You've got to get research behind it. If you're great at organizing people, you got to bring the people to the policy. So I think a lot of times, sometimes in our generation, we're reactive, which is fine. But you have to move from the protest to the policy. And how do you make those changes is up to you, but there definitely is some strategy behind it.
Yes, I'd love to add in. I think specifically, if I can draw from a personal example, I go to a top 10 public high school in the nation, but we lack a lot of diversity at our high school. Not only racial diversity, but economic diversity. Less than 1% of our student population follows the free or reduced lunches. We have a vast majority of Caucasian students, but very few minority students that come from a minority. So I think that part of that education and fixing or reforming our education system as far as it goes with the racial divide, we have to bring in diverse perspectives, students of all different backgrounds, belief systems, and that's the first way we need to address this divide.
In this generation, we surround ourselves around a lot of the negative and such as entertainment. And as you may see, a lot of people may say, well, how we are what we surround ourselves around. And, you know, this generation, with the back of our ancestors, they were beaten and they were victimized by the N-word. And in today's society, we use it as one of our standard vocabulary. So, and I believe that we are what we surround ourselves around. So, do you think that we kind of slandered the marches and the fights that our ancestors fought against that discrimination, using that word?
I think we have, and I think that, again, it comes to education. If they knew what they said, if we knew what they sacrificed themselves for, we would have better respect for that word. And I also think that if you give power to what you say, what comes out of your mouth. So if you let them continue to call you that, you're giving people power over you. And I think that you should allow yourself to. So I think that you give power to your words, and I think that you should have more respect for that. So I do think we have slandered and disrespected our ancestors and elders.
Well, it's unfortunate that, for example, the N-word has become so ingrained within our culture that we need to sort of break away from that. How do you do that? Well, you can break away from certain music. I mean, realistically speaking, like it's a difficult process, but at the same time, you, as you said, there's power in words, and so you have to take initiative and say, all right, I am going to understand and realize that people have died, people were, you know, beaten, and those things in itself serve as the reasons why we should allow ourselves to break free from what has become so ingrained in our culture. It's just a matter of awareness and taking the issue upon yourself and having the strength to break away from it as well.
Piggybacking on what Brian said in terms of the music and who you surround yourself with, I think more of what you're exposed to, your education, once you're educated on that, and of course your maturity, once you realize that is, you know, you have not much in common with that anymore, or you're not really attracted to that lifestyle, once again, you'll break yourself away from that music. So once you grow and you educate and you expose yourself to other things, that will be out of your norm, it won't be as hard to break away from that.
I had one student come up to me and they had stated, well, do you think there should be legislation in place that's put in place that says that to end this divide, to stop, you know, the word being used, to be legislation in place to actually end that word in music, since we're so much on the racial division in America, since that it's such a part in today's society as entertainment. Do you think that the legislation in place to end that, just stop it as a whole? A student came to me asking me.
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I will say that on a federal level, the federal government is going to, take a step in the right direction and really bring comprehensive reform. It's up to the states to implement and to abide by the law. So, even if we did decide to put that law or put that word against where it's illegal in states, or music, I think that's an interesting kind of scope. I don't know if we can have that censorship in terms of freedom of speech, because that word does have a changing definition for many, many people, and many generations kind of see that word maybe not in the full ugliness and the deeply rooted history that it has. Some people see it as brotherhood, or see it in terms of love. And so I think we have to kind of recognize that divide. But I also think that, you kind of what you see now too, just with Indiana recently, if it's not in federal legislation, if it's not in the government, if it's not in state constitutions or in workplace policies, what you're seeing now with our LGBT brothers and sisters, you have to have that language, that piece sometimes to protect different classes. And so if that's something that someone wants to take up in terms of the N-word and use it, I definitely advocate for them to try, but I do think that would be a difficult journey for them to really follow through with.
Right.
And I think that's best seen with the scandal recently at Oklahoma University and how that word was used and the repercussions that followed. I feel like the best route to making sure that we respect everything that is involved with that word is kind of relying on the media and how that's portrayed. And especially after that Oklahoma University video came out, it was important for us to learn about it through the media and how the media reacted to that. So it's important for us, as the media serves as kind of a watchdog function for not only the government, but for the citizens and for the public. It's important for them to then use their resources to educate the public about this word, and I think that would probably be the best route.
Okay. And as we learned, as we all learned here, as we learned in our government classes, that we the people, in our Constitution, it says that we the people to create a more perfect union, to establish that justice and ensure domestic tranquility. And what it means by domestic tranquility is peace, to establish that peace in society, and having that racial divide and where people feel as though they're being divided and segregated is a violation of the right of which the America has promised them. So here, what says domestic tranquility, it means peace. And the racial division in America is not peace. People feel as though that they're separated, and that's not sustaining peace in America. And so there's always room for change. And our founding fathers left the Constitution open for an open interpretation for that change. So do you think, as you said, the legislation, do you think there should be legislation? And we have another hand where, it's the legislation is used, it may be for the word, maybe a good terminology. It has different meanings to it. So there's always room for change, as you said, with legislation. And due to all the jury trials, dealing with Trayvon Martin and Mr. Garner and Mike Brown, it's all built around jury trials. And we see this day and time, our generation, always with law enforcement, in courts, in jury trials. And there was a case with jury trial, and a man was tried by the Supreme Court, a black man was tried by an all-white jury. Who do we call our peers in this day and time? Who do we refer to as our peers?
One thing I can say, the reason probably why those juries were all white is because they're registered to vote. So in order for you to sit on that jury, sit on there and help that brother and sister, you must register to vote. So the moment that you register to vote, you have your voice and you exercise your vote, and you will be that peer that helped that brother or talk to that brother, understand the experiences of that brother. So the moment that you're up there and you're registered to vote, you're a part of that peer, you're a part of that group. But the moment that you sit down and you complain, you're doing nothing because you're not registered to vote.
I consider my peer like my equal in terms of everybody on this panel is my peer. But I think in terms of the jurors and the court cases in general, I think that we should push for more black judges and black prosecutors, because we're really outnumbered in terms of the court. We're outnumbered in the law, in terms of law. So I think we should push for more black people in courts in general, and perhaps that will bring more equality in courts in terms of the general overview of the law, consumer fairness.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of my colleagues have said, but I also want to point out too, when you are on jury duty, the lawyers and the attorneys and prosecutors will be questioning you to see if you have that racial bias. And so it is really critical, like Tamar was saying, like, yes, you can get the opportunity to serve as a juror, but also making sure those questions that they're asking you and the jurors that are actually serving are not ones that have racial biases or have discriminatory, like have had history of discrimination. I think that there is a piece where sometimes the peers might be people who are already against you before you even get on the stand. And so we really just should take into consideration some of the criteria and questions that are asked in the pretrial system before the jurors even make it to the bench.
Right. So what do we think that the main issue is in today's society, which causes this?
Like I was going back to lack of equality in the courts. I know it's not in terms of just black people in general, in terms of like Asian people, more Asian jurors, more Asian judges, more Asian prosecutors. I think it should be more equality in the courts. I think that leads to separation.
Just piggyback back on the having more people out there involved. Another thing I've seen common and what leads to divide is because not a lot of African American black people, they don't rise up to that leadership position in terms of running. If you see yourself in a issue or a problem in your community, go ahead and run for it. Lead that community that you live in and lead those people that are following you. So that I feel like would probably mend it, because a lot of times what I see is that in communities that need help or in communities that needs much more attention, other people are rising to that occasion that do not experience the same experiences as people in that community. So it's more of a divide between them. So if more people or more black people would own up, and not really own up, but grow into that leadership position, I think that they would somehow mend the bridge or that gap.
Right. And I do believe that we are not just generation of today, but we are generation tomorrow. We must take place, take that action in our communities to cause that change. We say we want change, but the change must first begin in ourselves before we can even try to put it into aspect into our community. So we must first change, as you say, take part in your community, do those things. So,
I think a lot of that also comes back to education and having equal educational opportunities for people of all colors, and making sure that they, from a young age, are mentored and are inspired, encouraged to pursue those leadership opportunities or those educational necessities to become a lawyer or a judge or a prosecutor. Making sure that we're encouraging all children, regardless of race or religion or creed or anything, to pursue their ambitions.
I think in terms of, as well, is that when you decide to be civically engaged, and you decide I do have the power, my vote is power. I think a lot of times young people, we came out for 2008, we had strong numbers in the youth vote for 2012, but even those midterm elections in 2010 and 2014 are so critical. So a lot of times we think voting is the only step we have to take. That's really the first step. That really, your first step actually should be researching the candidates before you vote for them. Yeah. But the second step is voting. But then it's also about holding your government, leaders, your elected officials accountable. I mean, they work for you, so you should be the one who's holding them accountable. And lastly, I like to think of voting like a job review. So if you have a job and you have a performance evaluation, if you have not done well, you need to be fired. And if you have done well, you should keep your job. And so really kind of thinking through, like, what are some of the steps that you can take to be civically engaged? Voting is definitely a part of that.
And as you said, those midterm elections are the most important out of all, because that's where your voice is actually heard, where they see the presidential election, where that's by an electoral college, or your midterm election, when you're voting your senator, you're voting for your legislators. Those is your votes are actually being taken into place. So we need to encourage our communities to go out during midterm elections and take that action. So, okay. So what do you think that we, as being from different groups and different areas of life and the different organizations that we belong to, as Lauren and as Miss Rachel, part of the different organizations, what can we do and come together as one to rally together and call that change?
Sure. So with Generation Progress, again, we are based in Washington, D.C., but we have action networks. And so if you are interested in any one of the action efforts that we have, whether that's gun violence prevention, whether that's campus sexual assault, student debt issues, access to higher education, what we do is we bring and train young people on the issues that you care about. And so if that is organizing training, if we want to have campaign training, messaging strategy, we bring young people together who have those similar passions and want to make a difference either on their campus or in their community. And so those are definitely programs for people, and I'm happy to talk with anyone after the panel who's interested in joining and being a part of those.
So very similar to Ms. Lauren's organization, Youth for National Change is all about giving youth their voice in issues that actually pertain to youth. Specifically, our biggest goal for the next 2 years is to get a student on the national educational boards so that we can have students with their voice being heard when it comes to their education and the education they're receiving in local communities. And as many of these other organizations are, we have chapters and in most states in the United States, and our goal again for the next years is to have a chapter in every single state, because we think it is important that students have a voice in the education they're receiving and that they can give feedback when they're not receiving the education that they deserve.
And at this time, we will now pause for a second. We will have now coming up to speak to you all, Mr. Michael Brown Sr. coming to give you a word of encouragement. Let's give him a round of applause, please.
Good evening. I just want to start off by saying since August 8, 2014, it's been a hard struggle. It's almost like walking again, taking baby steps to get myself and get the family back together. So much of a hard track. I do a lot of speaking to youth, just to encourage them, to let them know we have your back. And a lot of times, what we don't understand is that we have to sit back and listen to them. That's true. We can't always just talk over these kids. We have to sit back and just listen. And once you get in tune with them, they tell you what you need to know, and then you can help them with their best interests. But yeah, that's basically what I've been on to encourage the youth, and just keep pushing forward with that. I appreciate all the love from all over the nation. We love y'all, just like y'all love us. And thank you.
Let's give him another round of applause. Thank you all, Mr. Brown, for coming out and sharing those words of encouragement.
Late for my flight. I'm so sorry I was been a little longer. I just want to say something.
So as he said, we encourage the parents. Please talk and sit with your kids and see how they feel. Talk and see how they feel. Because like I said, if they cannot talk to you, who else can they talk to? Besides, people out in the streets, who else can they talk to? Sit down and talk to your parents. The kids talk to your parents. Let them know what's going on. Let them know. And at this time, we will now have our Q&A at this time. Do you have any questions?
Hi. I wanted to congratulate all you guys for the panel that you're sitting on, and I wanted to raise awareness. We do have a silent population. We do have a silent population of HIV positive young adults who didn't die, that are on medication, and I'm taking a wish just bringing this to everyone's attention, because I think that it's so important that this silent population is in colleges, they're all over the world. I could say at least 2 out of 20 are either infected or affected. by HIV, and we have to give them some safe places, some allies, in an effort to get them to be able to disclose. Because when you're afraid, I mean, you're not going to tell your partner. You have a lot of states that it's against the law to have sex with someone. So why would you tell them, you know, I mean, that needs to be one of our plights, is what I'm saying. You know, it's really important that we don't forget about our, and I can disclose myself. I've been HIV positive for over 30 years. 58 years old. I'm here to say that as a result of the support and the advocacy that I was able to receive, that I can stand here today at 58 and get back to you guys and say, this is a proclamation and we just can't.
So, what's your question for the panel? Go ahead,
My
sir.
question is, how can we begin to build allies for these young people who are positive, who are still afraid? Yes, this is a silent population that's living in our community every day.
Your response?
One thing I would say is that first is when talking about HIV, thank you again for sharing. When talking about HIV or AIDS, it's such a strong stigma and such a ugly truth that a lot of us, young or old, white or black, whatever religion, or whatever creed, but with that, it's such a strong stigma and it's so frowned upon because everybody has these assumption of what it is with no actual idea or education about it. So with that, it's required plenty of education. Recently, I'm a student at Georgia State University. I just took a class that has just started, kid you not, a filled auditorium every Mondays and Wednesdays in terms of HIV and AIDS and learning about who is affected, how you're affected, the stigma that's involved in it, and what we can do as young people to get other people involved into getting tested. So that's one thing we're working with, is trying to get more young people tested and involved, as well as educating young people on HIV/AIDS. So definitely that stigma is real strong.
And in terms of creating allies, again, like, thank you so much for sharing your personal story. You know, I think that when you change the face of HIV and you change the face of people who have AIDS, when you actually say, that is my sister, that is my brother, that is my cousin, that is my friend, that is my roommate, you know, I think when you start to have those really transparent conversations as well on like a policy level when it comes to mandatory having sex ed conversations when you're in the 5th grade or 6th grade or, you know, middle school or high school, talking about protecting yourself as well. So I think some of those pieces are missing on a policy level, and therefore it kind of trickles down when you're not able to really have those kind of conversations at home or even in community centers or even your neighbors aren't having these conversations. So I think once you change the face of it, where you say, this is my family, these are my friends, these are people who are going through this, because it is a lot of black women who are suffering with this, particularly. And so I think when you start to change the definition behind HIV and who has it, then I think we can push forward and hopefully, you know, build more allies and really strengthen the movement altogether.
I think spreading awareness is a key part. I know I can speak for at least Morehouse College and many of the HBCUs, and it is a huge thing. It is much respected and much, we put a lot of characters behind it in terms of spreading awareness. That should help. And I think that, I know it would be, I can imagine it would be hard to ask, but I think the allies should present themselves to us. I can't imagine if it's telling anybody I would have something like that, but I think that if they did, like your testimony helped a lot, but the allies should, in terms of helping themselves, say, hey, I have this so-and-so, and what can I do to help you? And so we can help each other. So I think that would help.
I have a question. Oh, I didn't know.
We'll take the one in the front first.
I have a question.
We'll come to you next time.
How you doing?
Okay, everybody who has a question, can you
All right.
say that? No ladies on my line.
How you doing? My name is Madi Salam. Really, I don't have a question. I just want to share something with the panel of my understanding of racism. It is fair to say that this topic seems to be on racism. Racism, to my understanding, is a powerful system of all colors This powerful system attacks in any shape, form, and fashion and takes advantage of a group of people. Saying that to say that one person cannot be a racist. Powerful system of racism is in our law books, that's wrong, our court system, in the police, prosecutors. But you are the solution. This is what breaks that system. You are the solution. Different ethnic groups, young, intelligent. You can break it. That racist system that's out there of all different colors of power, and a lot of people get caught up into that point. I'm gonna go, but it's not just a group of people. It's a group of racist people collectively together with all the power. But groups like you break through that system. So God bless you. Y'all keep doing what y'all do.
Where you are today in terms of what changed your mind or caused you to be or to take the path in youth leadership that you've taken and that have gotten you here today? And how would you go about strategizing to get other youth to be where you are? Because they're not used to hearing the news, they don't want to hear the news, they aren't concerned about history, and it's not all the youth. So what makes you all different than the actual youth that's out on the street that really needs this? I assume that you all probably, through your family and connections, led you this way, but how do you reach those that don't have that kind of a connection? How do we bring them in?
Anybody want to touch on that first?
Sure, I'll start. My passion for public service really did come, as you said, from my family. My grandfather is the most influential person in my life. He had a really interesting background. Just to give you a short story, he was born and raised in North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham. He here's some people. Woo, yes, all right. But essentially, he dropped out of school at the age of 14. He was living on the street, and then immediately kind of came to a YMCA to live. And then he decided really to change his life around, go to school, end up going to Morehouse College, end up being, in the end, the first African-American mayor of the city that I'm from, which is Wilmington, Delaware. And so he knew that he always wanted to help people. Yes, Wilmington, so many connections here. But I will say, because that he knew to give back, he knew that he, maybe started off on the wrong path, but he knew that he wanted to help people and serve his community specifically. I knew that I wanted to do the same thing. And so it really did just trickle down to me when I knew that I wanted to impact communities, impact our community specifically. And I think the way to kind of engage young people especially is just to talk to them. Literally have conversations with your younger cousins, your friends, your family, and say, like, what do you want to do with your life? How can I help you? How can I bring you up? I think a lot of times we talk at, we don't talk with.
Yes.
And so when we're able to really have conversations and help each other learn and help each other grow, then we can make a movement happen, or we can make change happen in our communities.
Yes.
I know in my case, I didn't really have a choice. My mom would say, hey, you about to do this. But I always wanted to make a difference. Yeah, I'm just keeping it real. I always wanted to make a difference. But in terms of connecting people like me, I think that we are those victims. Trayvon Martin, he was around my age. Mike Brown was around my age. And I think that it involves people of that age group. So that's how we make a connection. Say, it could have been you. It could have been your cousin. It could have been your brother. It could have been somebody close to you. So I think that in terms of making a connection, you involve that struggle of what Trayvon Martin's family's been through and incorporating into their lives.
It's a bit different for me. It didn't come from my family. I was angry, actually. I started questioning everything around me, and then through that question came anger, because the response that I got from them were not what I wanted to hear, or was not fair in a sense. So because of that, I just took initiative upon myself, and I got involved. I walked into the state capitol, and I said I wanted to do something now in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, and I said I wanted to do something now. And I got started into the legislative work for Representative then, Alicia Thomas Morgan. And then since then, it branched off into National Action Network, and ever since then, it's been one thing after one thing. So the fact that I care, I think I care a little bit too much, because, at such a young age, I'm starting to see a little gray hair. But I care, and I was angry, and I was upset, and I was infuriated at what was going on around me, and because of that, I got involved. And in terms of getting other people involved, is letting them know that this affects you. This will happen to you. If it will not happen to you, it will happen to somebody that you know if you don't do something now. So because of that, that's also been a thing of myself, and as well as getting young people involved, and not so much as putting them on a forward back end and saying we need you and we need you, but getting other people involved, and we're standing together and we're going to do this together. So that's my way of my story of getting involved, as well as getting other people involved.
I think similar to Tamar, my family has always been my supporters, but my community was really my inspiration or my motivation. Specifically to me, the issue of homelessness is very important to me, and when I was 10 years old, going into middle school, I tried calling all of these organizations in my community that were helping homeless in different ways, but they all told me I was too young to volunteer at their organization, to do anything that they were trying to do. And for me, it was really discouraging to see people in my community telling me I was too young, telling me that I wasn't able or wasn't ready to make a difference when I myself knew that I could do it. And so I was lucky enough to stumble upon an organization that was, after many phone calls, that was willing to help me volunteer, to help me make that difference I wanted to make. And for me, I think mentorship was the biggest or is the most influential aspect in my life that has motivated me to continue service, providing service to my community. And I think specifically the way we can reach out to youth that might not have those connections, that might not have that family support or that community support, is through our education system, and providing them with that mentorship, whether that be teachers or counselors or students of a higher grade level. Just making sure that they have those role models in their community that are mentoring them, that are inspiring them and motivating them, and encouraging them really to make their voice heard, whether in any way possible, through what they believe in.
Right. And for myself, I think one thing that I've stuck with from a very early age was understanding that you have to be a good listener. So I've been always listening to elders, whether that be someone who's 1 year older than me to someone who's has over 50 years on me. So for me, that's how I got involved, just listening to people, kind of absorbing information, but at the same time listening and then responding back to individuals, and understanding that you have to sort of understand where other people are coming from before you can give them your side of your thinking, your stance on a particular issue. I was away for school, so I'm from New York, and so I didn't really get heavily involved until I returned back to New York for school. I was in an isolated community in Connecticut for 4 years for high school, so a lot of the issues that I was experiencing were sort of slight injustices, just being in an all-white town, going to a boarding school, and it's sort of raising those issues up within the school community and understanding that I didn't experience that much injustice in New York City, so going to an all-white town and experience it could sort of brought about a certain level of awareness. And then returning to New York, someone brought me on to National Action Network and told me, about all the opportunities available that you can get involved. And from that point on, I've been involved all over the city in different initiatives, whether it be gun violence, whether it be race issues, class issues. Even on that Columbia's campus, one thing that's been very prominent have been financial issues with first generation and low income students, and I feel like that's an aspect of our education system that a lot of institutions forget about. The students that they accept, they give them the full scholarships, but they forget that these students struggle to, find means of getting a meal. If their meal plan finishes, they're left on their own and no one is there to assist them. So they have initiatives where meal sharing, where students literally meet at particular times to swipe in students to give them a meal, just so that way they don't go hungry at night while they're doing work. Those initiatives that to me are more impactful, and just seeing students care about each other and work together to make sure that everyone is taken care of, and there's a certain level of accountability on campus from that, even sexual violence as well.
Can I say something right quick? I think that a lot of people, in terms of older people, think that youth don't care about what's happening in the world. We really do. I can speak on the Mike Brown incident. When the indictment, we were waiting on the indictment to come in, the results. 100 people gathered around one TV, I can speak at Morehouse campus in my dorm and waited for that patiently. You heard everything. And I think that we should get rid of that stigma that black people and youth don't care about what's happening. We really do. And I know I can take the blame of bringing more people and spreading more awareness on my campus, and everybody can, but we do care. Just want to let y'all know that.
All right, next question.
It was an 18-year-old that took that picture of the phone email, and that really hit home with me. Because I keep thinking, this young brother made it so that everyone can know that there is a result. So my question to these young aspiring scholars are two things. The first thing is that if you were to make a prediction of who would be the next president, who would you predict it to be? And also, if you have an organization that you would represent, Brotherhood Scholarship Service, any type of organization that you wanted to represent, what would that be?
That's a good question. Great question. Have a response.
I don't want to make a prediction. Maybe we'll wait until everyone announces.
Yeah, good question. When the rest of them recognize that they're running, then we'll tell them.
Yeah. But I can answer the second question. I know what organization I want to represent in the future. I guess my dream job would be to manage the philanthropy sector at Fortune 500 companies. I think that they have a lot of resources at their fingertips that we need youth specifically to bring a new perspective and be able to shed light on some of the issues, some of the organizations, some of the causes that need those resources the most and that need that dedicated time and dedicated individuals to bring those issues to attention.
I look forward to continuing to work with Nan. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah. Yeah, I continue to work with Nan, and as Jameer said before, we need that diversity in our criminal justice system. So as me being myself, I want to actually be in the criminal justice system and make that difference and be that, that next attorney general. Next question.
Good afternoon. I am a retired educator, and I walk through the high schools and some of the middle schools, and I hear them playing music. And it just bothers me that the words is being used, and they are repeating this constantly back and forth. And how do we get to some point where you all are not referred to, as, especially women, as to, the B word? That bothers me. And as young brothers, I see them saying it more than I see the girls. And then another thing is the fact that I see them, see young men striking women. And that bothers me. Because if you strike one, then you will strike another. So my whole thing is, how do we come to...
I like to comment on that one, as you were saying. As they said on the Black Male panel, the fathers that are fathers need to not just be fathers to their kids, but be fathers to the kids in their neighborhoods. It first begins at home. A school is not there to train a person how to be a man, how to be a young lady. I think it is up to us as being the people in our community to set that tone and to be, as my grandmother always tells me, as with their community, everybody knew everybody. Everybody, you was allowed to speak to that child, you was allowed to say something to that child. But in this day and time, if you say something to somebody's child, somebody will get upset. We need to stick together as one and help. Like I said, it takes a village to raise a child. So I think that's on that topic.
I'm more interested in the music aspect.
In the music aspect and the music that you listen to well. Once we get more, I think another thing, it's something about the music, I don't know what it is, but I will say that, like I said earlier, with maturity, and once you're exposed to other things and other type of lifestyles and other things, you realize that you have no connection with that type of music anymore, so I think that comes with maturity. But in other terms, if we could get more artists with more variety, because a lot of these music all sound the same, and it gets tired and it gets old. I know for myself personally, I get tired of listening to the same thing, so I start reverting back to oldies. But in terms of that, if we can get more artists, and if young people would do a great job at just young people coming together and saying, you know what, can we listen to something else? Can we have another topic? Then of course the artists would, create something else. But if we're gonna if as young people, we still go by those mixtapes and listen to those same songs, then they'll still produce the same type of music. So as young people, we have to make a change. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Quickly, we're about to wrap this panel and move into the next panel, and I do want to give the youth an opportunity to ask some questions since this is a youth move panel. I want to ask, if possible, for the adults, if you don't mind, ma'am. No. I'm saying to let the youth in the line ask the questions. Oh, ma'am, do you mind? Okay. Is there an interpreter over here?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to ask these last couple of questions, and what we're going to do is this is going to be the lightning round because we want to get the last panel, the next panel on. I want each of you to ask your question, and then the panelists can address whatever question they want. So we're going to do all the questions at once, answers, and wrap up, and then we'll move on to the next panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is, what advice do you have for the children that are on the streets? My question is, how do we as black people get out of the mold that other races put us in as violent and vulgar?
Good question. Good question.
My question is, how do we change or try to begin to change the outlook on what the young people and society overall and how they view police officers and the actual profession of police officers? I myself am a young police officer. I just entered the academy not too long ago. I'm upstate New York, and I do want to make a change in my community. I will be policing where I grew up at, and so far, it's a really tough thing to do. Because I'm under that umbrella just with everyone else that are my colleagues. So what I would like to do is encourage other young black Americans, people of all different backgrounds to join the force. If you want to see a change, you have to be that change.
Right.
And also, I do want to let everyone know, that with the music and the use of the N-word, it's all a culture. And I don't want us to get confused with who dictates the culture. We do, as young people. If you look at the McDonald's commercials, it's hip hop. If you look at things like that, we run this. And they would have us to believe that there's an old white guy behind there pushing buttons and he runs things, but it's actually us. It's our culture, and we dictate what we like, and we need to push forward what we really want. So I just want that to be clear.
What can you, as a young leader, do to include more of what can you, as a young leader, do to include more of those that are being left behind?
Have a lightning round, have a quick responses by our panelists. Any question that you heard that you'd like to respond to?
I'd like to respond to the young police officer. One, thank you for your service, and I look forward to hearing great things that you do. But I do think one, police officers are definitely heroes, putting their life on the line every single day, and the unfortunate stereotype that's out right now is not a blanket for every single police officer. But I will say what you can do, and I hope you encourage your colleagues, those at the police academy, is really start those community conversations. If you're going back into your community, you should be taking 10 people with you. You should be setting up meetings. You should be setting up meetings or in the community center or with NAN or whoever. But you should be having and leading those conversations and bringing those community stakeholders to the forefront to really break the divide that might be existing in the community that you're from. So if you brought, people in your community, whether it's your parents, whether it's your cousins, whether it's police officers, and they were able to see that police officers actually do care. They are there to protect and serve, and not just to think about their own racial tension that might be going on. I think you can make a whole lot of difference. So I wish you the best of luck, and I know that you can do it, but I definitely encourage you, as soon as you get your badge, you should just take that into activism and start making a change.
I wanted to respond on the young lady, she said that, what do we do about the youth as young leaders, about the youth that are being left behind? I know my experience before I got involved is that a lot of times when it were youth programs and youth things, the youth would have to travel to come there. What's wrong with bringing that program and that initiative to that neighborhood, to that community, to where those youth are in need? So a lot of times, instead of having them carry, we travel, we'll go there, we'll work with them, we'll do things, and more of stuff that are more relatable to youth, and interest of, because a lot of times it's a wide gap of interest, and what we find interesting and what our well-seasoned activists find more interesting is completely different. So the fact that we can go into our communities instead of them coming to, instead of other youth coming to us, as well as finding more of a common ground of things that we both have interest in.
I want to address the young police officer. I have no idea why people don't like police. I never understood it. Why? In terms of growing up, why? Now I can. I have a better understanding. But in terms of growing up in Zone 1 Atlanta, Bankhead, if you're not familiar with Zone Atlanta, people really don't like police for no reason at all. They just say they don't like police and have no reason not to. I think that we should spread awareness to that as leaders. Also, you should push for more black police officers in the streets. They need help. Seriously, we need more black officers. And to address the, I think it was young man in terms of fixing the mold, I forgot where he was in terms of, I think you should put it on yourself to educate yourself about what have black people done for the world in terms of, it goes back to Africa, our roots in Africa. Even here, what did we have done and what we have given to the world in terms of everything? I think
to what the young lady said in terms of individuals who were left behind, I find it hard to say that, to call these individuals left behind, because I feel like each person who we categorize in that particular group, they each have some sort of struggle, some sort of problem, or they just need guidance. And so I myself wouldn't call them left behind per se. I feel like that's the wrong term to use when dealing with youth. They're youth just like us, and they're all capable of getting involved and making changes, whether that be on a small scale, micro scale, macro scale. Either way, I feel like it's a matter of just a simple smile. I know one thing that we discussed at the huddle is, if you encounter an individual in your neighborhood, whether that be on the street corner, walking the street, if you see these individuals, these youth every day, you need to take initiative, interact, have these discussions, conversations, and get to know them, because that simple conversation goes a long way. And I feel like we're quick to judge and quick to call them left behind, when in reality you need to bring them in. And by bringing them in, that means just engaging with them and interacting with them on a daily basis and making sure that they're okay.
All right, let's give our panelists a round of applause. So we encourage you on today to not just talk about the change, but to make that change. All right? Thank you.
So next, what we're going to do is have our next panel. Sorry, guys. We're going to have our next panel, which is going to be